Deep in the dry brush of the agricultural frontier, giant chains tied between twin bulldozers rip down ancient hardwood trees under the cover of dusk. This land is legally protected, marked red on government satellite maps and strictly forbidden from commercial farming. Yet within hours, heavy machinery turns burnt soil into straight rows of seedbed. The illegally cleared plot officially does not exist on paper, but the harvest it yields will soon feed the world. A dust-covered grain truck pulls into a rural aggregation terminal at midnight, loaded with 40 tons of uncertified soy. At the weigh station, the driver hands over a paper manifest listing a small, fully licensed farm 5 miles down the road. The clerk stamps the ticket without looking outside. By blending illegal grain with legally registered harvests inside the massive concrete silo, the origin of the illegal crop vanishes instantly into a single golden mass. Global commodity traders operate on thin profit margins where massive volume is the only way to generate billions in revenue. Excluding illegal land from the supply pipeline cuts off raw yield and pushes raw purchasing costs higher for export conglomerates. By creating a deliberate blind spot at the initial point of collection, corporate buyers secure cheap grain while maintaining total deniability. The financial incentive favors looking away as long as the papers match the weight on the scale. Green certification schemes were built to reassure Western buyers that their consumer products do not cause tropical deforestation. These programs rely heavily on third-party auditors who inspect local farms once every 12 months, often announcing their visits weeks in advance. Instead of focusing on satellite data, inspectors check paper entries, trusting self-reported declarations submitted by the farmers themselves. A paper audit cannot track a truck that moves grain between neighboring fields in the middle of the night. From the hinterland silos, high-volume river barges carry thousands of tons of blended grain downriver toward ocean shipping ports. Once loaded onto massive ocean vessels bound for European and Asian ports, certified and laundered grain become completely indistinguishable. Bill of lading documents label the entire cargo as sustainable based on a diluted percentage calculation. A single certified form on paper legally covers thousands of tons of dirty soy sitting in the ship cargo hold. The mechanics of this laundering process rely on a structural trick known as mass balance accounting. Under this regulatory rule, exporters do not need to keep sustainable soy physically separated from uncertified grain throughout the supply chain. Instead, they simply match total volume credits bought on green exchanges against total tonnage shipped overseas. As long as the paper credits equal the export weight, the entire batch earns green approval, regardless of where the soy grew. At the end of the chain, supermarket shelves in major cities stock meat, dairy, and processed foods stamped with eco-friendly seals. Consumers pay a premium price, believing their purchases support ethical farming and forest preservation. In reality, the certification seal functions as a financial hedge that insulates multinational brands from public backlash while doing nothing to stop land clearing. The market sells the illusion of clean production while continuing to consume dirty commodities. High above the earth, satellite arrays capture sharp thermal images of clearing fires burning inside protected indigenous reserves.
Investigators overlay these satellite coordinates with official export registry filings to track the illicit trade. The satellite imagery shows fresh crop rows on land burned weeks prior, yet official government tax receipts claim that exact grain volume came from an established farm dozens of miles away. The satellite records prove the physical impossibility of the official paperwork. The paper fraud extends into offshore holding companies and agricultural credit markets. Local operators secure low-interest green loans designed for sustainable farming, using verified land titles as collateral for the bank paperwork. They use those funds to clear illegal frontier land nearby, doubling their planting area while using one registered property to clean the harvest of both sites. Financial capital intended to protect ecosystems directly funds their systematic destruction. Middlemen known as grain brokers act as the vital shock absorbers between illegal farmers and international grain traders. These local traders buy uncertified soy at a heavy discount directly at the farm gate, paying cash to avoid leaving electronic bank trails. They then sell the crop to major export terminals using shell companies that exist only on paper. The brokers absorb all legal liability, allowing international corporations to buy cheap grain with total insulation.
Inside regional tax offices, fraudulent invoices known as phantom paper tickets circulate freely through the system. Corrupt land registries issue fake land documents for uncultivated plots, creating fictional ghost farms that exist only as tax identification numbers. These ghost farms generate fake harvest certificates which real farms purchase to cover their excess illegal production. The paperwork transforms dirty soy into clean, legally tradable assets before the truck even reaches the highway. Bulk carriers carrying 60,000 tons of soy cross international ocean waters, their paper trails sanitized by multiple port handoffs. When a cargo ship changes ownership while still at sea, its shipping documents are reissued by offshore trading desks. This intermediate paper transfer strips away original regional land disclosures, replacing them with generic international commodity codes. By the time the ship docks, the origin of the grain is completely erased. Trade regulations across major importing nations lack strict enforcement tools to verify the true physical origin of bulk raw commodities. Customs inspectors check import duties and health standards, but they do not possess the tools or authority to test grain DNA or audit foreign land titles. The law treats green certifications as self-verifying legal proof, creating a massive legal loop where nobody takes responsibility for checking what happened on the ground. For small local farmers who abide by conservation laws, this rigged commercial playing field makes honest agriculture financially impossible. Illegal operators who clear land without paying taxes or environmental fines flood the market with cheap grain, driving down local crop prices. Law-abiding growers are forced to choose between financial ruin or joining the shadow economy. The systemic failure of certification schemes forces whole regional economies to adopt fraud to survive. Inside massive industrial crushing plants, soybeans are ground down into animal feed and vegetable oil 24 hours a day. The high-speed processing machinery mixes raw grain from hundreds of different farms into continuous industrial streams. Once crushed, physical testing cannot determine whether the oil came from a sustainable farm or an illegally cleared forest reserve. The physical transformation permanently erases all evidence of environmental crime. Wall Street investment funds pump billions of dollars into large agricultural conglomerates based on corporate sustainability reports.
This capital allocation exposes the fundamental flaw of sustainable finance, where investment managers rely on self-reported corporate disclosures and rubber-stamped green certificates to meet environmental mandates. Capital flows into corporate treasuries, subsidizing infrastructure expansion like private ports and transport roads in vulnerable regions. Institutional investors end up financing commodity laundering while claiming to promote clean portfolios. When international governments threaten strict trade sanctions on illegal deforestation, exporting nations leverage global food security concerns to weaken regulation. Political trade groups push back against strict origin tracing, claiming detailed tracking demands violate national sovereignty and disrupt global supply security. Economic necessity is weaponized to preserve supply chain opacity, ensuring that dirty grain continues to move freely across international borders without interruption. Leaked internal audit files from major certification agencies reveal a system designed for failure from its inception. Inspector reports detailing clear land clearing violations on audited properties were routinely downgraded to minor paperwork errors by senior managers. Audit companies depend on the very agricultural exporters they inspect for their commercial income, creating an unavoidable conflict of interest where issuing strict failures means losing lucrative corporate contracts. At European and Asian receiving ports, giant suction pipes unload bulk carriers into towering storage silos in a matter of hours. The imported soy is instantly distributed to industrial livestock farms, feeding poultry and swine destined for supermarket meat counters. The entire global supply chain operates on speed and volume, leaving zero room for shipping delays or detailed origin checks that might slow down the pipeline. Policy attempts to reform commodity certification systems repeatedly fall back on voluntary industry pledges and promises of future technology solutions. Satellites and blockchain ledgers are frequently promoted as ultimate fixes, yet the underlying market incentives remain completely unchanged. As long as dirty grain is cheaper to produce and easier to blend than clean grain, illegal traders will find ways to manipulate software inputs just as easily as paper manifests.
The true cost of this commodity laundering machine is stamped into the changing landscape of the planet itself. Hundreds of thousands of hectares of biodiverse forests and grasslands vanish quietly into industrial monoculture every single year. The destruction is not caused by rogue operators acting outside the global economy, but by the legal market mechanism itself, which systematically converts environmental destruction into clean, certified corporate profits. The laundering of agricultural commodities is not a failure of the system. It is the system working exactly as designed. Green certification schemes provide corporate buyers with social license while preserving the relentless flow of cheap raw materials to global markets. Until the economic penalty for laundering dirty soy exceeds the massive profits earned from environmental theft, the green seals stamped on consumer goods will remain nothing more than paper shields for systemic fraud.